Okay, I think we're live for the latest edition of the Data Value Show. Today's show is going to be about migrations, legacy to AI, the great data migration. We'll talk about migrations of the past, migrations of the present, and see what the migration of the future will look like as well. And have someone that with a great lot of knowledge and a great wealth of experience. Let's welcome Sonny to the stage. Sonny, how are you doing?
I'm doing really well. Thank you for that kind introduction.
No, it's always our pleasure. I had a great time hanging out at the summit, and as always, you Sonny, it's never a dull moment. But for those that don't know you out there, would you like to give yourself a bit of an introduction and a bit of background on yourself?
Sure. I'm Sonny Rivera, and I'm heading data and analytics here at CPI Security, and super excited to be here. You know, my background has been in data and analytics for a long, long time, but I've done a lot of different things, from building guided missiles to, making my own software products to being a Snowflake data superhero. And so
you've got your own trading cards now as well. Oh, I mean, whoa.
This is sweet because we got our own trading cards, but who's on the cover of all the trading cards? Veronica Durgan and me.
There you go. So, you couldn't have a better pair of heroes for the front page.
I had to pay them top dollar to get them to do that,
or bribe them, and we'll leave that topic, and we'll keep that between ourselves. So yeah, again, thank you for being on the show. And yeah, today's topic was about migrations, and it was triggered by the recent movements in AI, and and people think, okay, I know I've got to go migrate to go and utilize this AI. So I thought, let's try and unpack migrations of the past, lessons learned, challenges that we may have seen in the past, and to look to see how maybe we can learn from those things for the future. So, and we just talked about this just before, and it was the old lift and shift versus lift, shift, and twist, or just redo it again gradually. Like it's death of your source system by 1,000 slices is another one. So, you've obviously had a little experience in these past. So, what's your experience of the approach of lift and shift? And maybe describe what we mean by lift and shift, for those don't know.
Yeah, and so the idea would be, hey, let's take the data model and structures and the data that we have and just lift them and move them to another platform. And we did this with on-premise platforms to other on-premises platforms, and we know how well those things work out. And then we moved them from on-premise platforms to cloud platforms, right? Whether it's Snowflake, Databricks, GCP, whatever else. And just really taking those assets as they are and moving them up. And sometimes that means moving the jobs that produce the data as well. And I've seen cases where people said, well, the thing that does all the data, we're just landing it there. We're still doing all the processing on hardware until we can slowly move those pieces up. But it is kind of fraught with peril, I think. But there's some good reasons to do it, but not a lot of them, I think.
Yeah, we can touch on the pros and cons of them in a minute. But so I think I've used this term about lift, shift, and twist, which is probably just it's taking any small amount of remediation, but with little amount of risk, and actually performing that. And yeah, I think that's the minimum I'd always like to go with. All right, so if you just copy everything lock stock across, you're taking years of probably loads of technical debt. You're taking bad data models. You're probably poor performant code. And go on. But with the lift, shift, and twist, at least you can maybe undo some of that stuff. And examples of that is probably doing some audits of actually what's being run on there at the platform at the moment. And even actually running audits to see of the things your pipelines are creating, who's actually accessing those objects, because by performing that, you could probably reduce the scope of your migration by, I'm going to quote some numbers, 30 to 50%. But it could be that sort of size. We've seen it before where we had loads of reports being generated on some dashboards, but then you realize the reports never run, so you didn't need the data that's supplying the dashboard. So in theory, you don't need those pipelines anymore as well. So by doing some sort of profiling and not just saying I'm going to take it all again is maybe a happy medium. And
I think that's a good idea, is to take, whatever is needed, and if you have a set of use cases that are being used, right, those are the things that you want to migrate over, or keep those processes running while the others you may want to deprecate.
Yeah, and I think I'll probably go on the third option, which is, I think I call it a migration by 1,000 slices. You're just taking things gradually. And yeah, if we lived in this perfect world, and time was no issue, and maybe cost was no issue as well, that would be the most natural, or that would be the best route to go and do it. Is you're retiring things off your old legacy platform as and when, with it being verified, with it being documented, with it being assured it's AI ready, with it having the associated cataloging, modeling, attribution, tagging, or whatever. You're going, what you're going to end up with, what is going to be of much higher quality and much better to build on top of. Yeah.
Well, I think what's interesting about that, migrating by slice, is what would those slices be? We talk about business value. Are they technical slices or are they business slices?
Yes. I suppose there's many way of slicing up the elephant, I suppose, isn't it? But it's that's a really good question. Is what would be the right approach? So sometimes domain, you could be doing it domain. It could be, as you're saying it, by the associated value. You've got a particular part of your platform that is taking 12, 14 hours, 15 hours to run overnight. If it fails overnight, your users don't have the data in the morning. They have to raise a ticket. They get it by the afternoon. It's not good for publicity, and it's not good for customer experience. So that could be right. We need to remove that critical piece off, move that critical piece off in a slice on its own.
And I'll tell you one quick anti-pattern I guess I've seen to that is we took business use cases, right? Yeah. Even if it was a report or even if it was just a business use case. Well, what you ended up doing was saying, well, I need these 5 pieces of data from 5 different systems. Now what do I pull over? And the business will say, even great, you gave me that one use case that we needed, but it's still a half a loaf or a tenth of a loaf because I need the 10 other things before I'm going to use your system.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a struggle there. I've seen that.
That's a really good aspect. It's the trust aspect. So it's great. You can migrate the best platform to the new. Well, you might migrate to the best platform in the world, but if everyone still wants to use the old one because the numbers having differences now that you can't explain, you failed. Because even if those differences were accurate and actually the values you got now were correct and the old ones were wrong, unless you're able to evidence that, people aren't going to move to it. So yeah, I think that's a really good point of the definition of success, and to actually make sure you're building that confidence and trust that will make sure the users go and migrate across, because you can migrate the platform. If you don't migrate the users, you still failed.
Yeah, and I would bet that in any and you probably know you do this a lot, Chris. So I'll be host. I'm going to ask you the question.
Okay, go for it.
What percentage of the migration is testing and validation versus actual work?
I'd say 20 to 25% is what we put down, and some of the things that we've done. And a large supermarket was migrating away from Teradata. And and it's precision on numbers. when you have such a large volume and the precision's different between the old one and the new one, even if the precision's more accurate on the new one, when you get rounding errors, those rounding errors require you to be able to, especially if it's a finance system, you've got to speak to all those accountants that have already booked this information historically. It's gone onto the books. It's issued to the shareholders and the rest of it. These are what you do. And now you realise you actually have some rounding errors in it. And what do you want to do? You want to admit you had the rounding errors, or do you want to challenge the new system, or the new system that's got a more accurate one? So, yeah, and that can be so time consuming, because it's very frustrating is when you're right, but when when what you've migrated is more accurate and you're having to justify it every time, it's very. But I suppose after a while of performing that, you build that trust, and they give up. We go, oh, okay, well, actually, he was right 25 times up until now. Maybe this time it is. Maybe it's another rounding error. And yeah, and hopefully it is. But yeah, it's not an inconsequential amount of time that you'd need to perform the testing sign off for a migration. And I think this is why loads of people go for that lift and shift, because it's really, really hard to reconcile against a different approach, a different modeling, the different steps that you may have taken to get that calculation, when all you've got to go by is the end, the end presentation there, or your end query to compare it to them. You've got to go back 5 steps to find out where it's different. So yeah, it's not hard. It's not easy. It's not easy. We've got a question here. Now I'm going to just take this question. I'm not too sure who it's from, because it doesn't show me on StreamYard. But could you experience data profiling? Yeah, so maybe that's an overused term, really, of data profiling. So when I was referring to that, it was it was profiling data to understand characters of its usage. I think the other one is profiling it probably for the quality as well. You'd profile it, and maybe profile it for the modeling and attribution on it. But yeah, so it is probably an overused term. But yeah, so what would, when you refer to data profiling, what would you refer to?
Yeah, one of the things I'm looking for is those typical testing things like correctness of the data, right? Accuracy. And I'm also looking for data types, right? Inconsistency, some profiling. Cardinality matters too as I profile, because maybe in lift and shift it's not that big of a deal, but if you start to remodel things, you want to know, like, hey, what's the cardinality of these things? Are they 10, or are they 10,000 or 100,000 or millions?
Yeah.
Right. So I look at those and look at to get a sense of completeness. How much of this data is actually null or incorrect or incomplete or just non-standard?
Yeah. And it's also duplicates of the same sort of information. If you've got 50 tables with a named customer, then they can't they can't there's something gone wrong somewhere. And I think
let me tell you just real quick a horror story again. We thought it was a good idea in the Hadoop world to say, hey, Chris, we're going to give you your own workspace and you can work on stuff and nobody's going to touch your data. And Sonny, you can do that. And Joey and Mary and Juan and all of these folks are doing that. And what you realize is that every one of them is just copying data from some root source. So we've now made copies of all that. And then we started creating our own metrics on all of those things, or doing that, our own processing. And you realize you had this proliferation of data everywhere, right? And what's right, what's wrong, but it's really the same data. We're all just using, and you end up with, we ended up with literally 500,000 tables.
Yeah.
Because that was the way we were doing it.
Yeah, and I'll just writing a note here is that we have had this, and it's not just the Hadoop era. I think we've had it since in the modern days. Like it's that copy paste culture. Yeah. It's like, oh, I don't want to change that, I might break it. Or it's going to be much harder to do an alter statement and go do that and go and talk to other users to say, by the way, I'm dropping these objects and putting these things in there. And is that okay with you? Oh no, what I'll do, I'll copy that pipeline, check it out, change the name, put Chris at the end of it, or project Y or whatever. So I know it's for this one. I'm going to run it all through. I'm going to add those few extra columns. I didn't bother putting on the other one because I don't have a good CI/CD process. I don't have a good schema management process. So I'm just going to copy paste it because that's what I've been shown and that's all I know how to do. And yeah, what happens is, yeah, you get the situation that we were talking about there. Is you've got multiple tables all doing the same thing, inefficiency of your code because you've got the same processes happening, which is a slight different adjustment. And you do that lift and shift, you're just taking all that stuff all over again, and which is the truth, which is the source of the golden truth. So
I'll add to one thing else we probably didn't mention, but you highlighted it. There's profiling of the data pipelines, right? And so there's also like, what are these pipelines doing, and profiling those things as well. So if you look at data profiling, think about different areas, and that profiling can be everything from what you were saying, Chris, like how is the data being used out all the way out at the edge by consumers? How's it being processed by pipelines? But also then looking at the quality of the data, the correctness of the data. So it could be all of those things. Just make sure you know which one you're talking about.
That's a good one. I like to use the term data provenance. So it's like from the art world of tracing it back for the history of its journey. And the same thing with data is like, okay, well, what's the provenance of that data? How accurate is it? Where's it come from? Who's validated it? Is it used by? Is this a source that everyone uses? Is this the golden? Does this have the most provenance or the most trust associated to it? But yeah, you're right. It's that untangling that spaghetti of pipelines and processes that have happened in the past, and trying to make sense of it, which is always a challenge. So with migrations on and using, and people have been migrating from mainframes to what we used to call the legacy data stack now as well. So like your large Oracle data being the teasers, your Teradatas.
Yeah.
And then we moved on, we're migrating from those appliances. Some of them, if they jumped the bandwagon a bit too early, they migrated to Hadoop. Others that decided not to do that, they would have migrated to the modern data stack. And whether you missed that migration or not, or whether you jumped through. But we're in a new world where AI is the big thing. So do you need a new data stack for AI? Are you on legacy that's not going to support that AI capability? Are you on a modern data stack that does support that AI capability, but you've done it so badly that you want to use the excuse to go and build a new platform? Is it not a migration? It's an enhancement. It's just leveling up what you've got.
It's really interesting to see. One, because when we talked about data, we were usually structured data. We were migrating structured data. And now you have this migration, plus you add AI, which wants to say, hey, I can really work well on semi-structured or unstructured data, whether that's files or audio or video or just PDFs that you have, or your SharePoint pieces or your legacy document management system will pull in data from there. So what I think is really interesting here is we've got this great technology that can help us maybe do analytics, understand our data, understand our business better and faster. And yet we keep tying it. We tie it to these legacy things like SharePoint. Okay, go grab information out of SharePoint. There's documents in there literally that are 20 years old. Right? Or go grab these PDFs. It can be daunting, I think, when you start to mix those unstructured data with your migration of structured data. So that would be a big challenge in my mind.
And that's a really good point. Is that if you're doing it, it's a two-stage activity. You don't try and do the two things at the same time. Because they're different beasts, your unstructured data to your structured data. And we can come on to the whole how that means your modeling of your data now, because you've got unstructured data and you've got structured data, and then now you've got your large language models, coming to your data models to have a whole additional complexity around your security now, because before it was quite easy with RBAC and ABAC. Now you've got to secure stuff you don't even know exists because it's all in the text. So yeah, that's so I'm going to go back to, we talked about lift and shift and twist, and then I don't know what we call we call it a migration by 1,000 slices, maybe the three scenarios, and just do some pros and cons of each of those ones. And it's horses for courses. There's always the right approach for the right situation. And lift and shift, if at least if you profile it and then minimize what you do lift and shift, that's a de facto. But if you take that approach, the reasons for taking that approach could be your existing stack, it's creaking. You're closing a data center. It's end of life software, end of life hardware. There's situations that you don't really have the luxury of the migration of 1,000 slices. You really just, and maybe the twist is a bit too much as well, because it's you don't have a wriggle room to ensure that you'll get it done in time. So in those cases, lift and shift is your only option, but don't stop there. I think lift and shift is your first step. I think once you've done that, you will need to do some refactoring and taking it all out. And the problem is, then that's very hard to go and get the budget and justification for to spend your team on it, because you see, I've got it, it works. Why do I need to spend any more money on it? And I think the answer I have there is because it's not AI ready. Is probably what I'd say.
I think a couple of things there. One reason you're probably doing a lift and shift is because you don't have the budget to do the twist or to truly migrate that and remodel that thing from the ground up. You don't have the budget nor the time, right? And so I've seen people do this because of that. I've also seen them do it, I don't want to say for political reasons, but I want to say for reasons that really you have to maintain a level of integrity and performance and trust, and say, hey, we're moving this up to the cloud. We're getting you something. It's better than nothing. Maybe it's faster. Maybe it's a little bit easier, but it's not a giant refactor. And then we incrementally improve. And in my case, I had one case where we had spent literally a year trying to redo this by the slice. And when I started, the CIO said to me, I'm like, well, we're going to turn down these systems. He's like, don't worry about that. Take your time, model those things, do the right things that you want to do. About 12 months in, he's like, this needs to be over. We have a new budgeting cycle, right? And suddenly it became, okay, let me just shift this up here so I can start to show value and go back and ask for more money, right? Or ask for money to do X, Y, and Z. Yeah. So just don't be surprised that the financial winds change and you need to show value, right?
And that's a really good point. Is we talked about technology is easy. It's the processes and people we just spoke about earlier, and of getting that budget is part of your process. And as tech people, we may not get to see or some of us don't. We get hidden. We're insulated from that. You don't know how many meetings and PowerPoint presentations and promises of putting your life on it, betting your firstborn or whatever that you will get it done on time and deliver what they need. And it's hard getting that justification, and especially people don't like to wait a long time to go and see associated benefits or value from it. So you need to carve up. It's like the slice of that elephant. You slice up that elephant in a way that you're able to get some value from each part. Maybe that's not the best terminology to use for elephants, because I was going to go to ivory and things like that, but it's not the route to go. But
so I will tell you one thing that I did was found what the CFO needed, right, and did a lift and shift that supported their needs, and we were able to show that the whole office of the CFO, how they could save millions of dollars a year. Once we did that, we did it as this really thin slice. Once we did that, that unlocked the purse for us to do more.
Brilliant.
And then the last thing I would say, if you're, if you're down in the trenches doing the work, that's one thing. But if you're a leader working with executives, I wanted part of that money. I didn't just say, we saved you $2 million.
Yeah.
We need half of that as reinvestment back into the technology so we can save you 10.
To fund future growth. So it's savings that fund, and unfortunately, I think if you go there and actually say these things up front, and this is a really good advice, it will fuel the ability to unlock more and more value. And you don't. We've all been there, or maybe it's been there, asking for X many thousands or millions of pounds to go and perform something, and it's very hard without the trust. And if you're able to, but find what is really going to gain that trust, and really what's going to be key to the main stakeholders that hold the purse strings. You solve that one, your life's going to be so much easier in the long run.
But you see what we've done is we slipped from lift and shift into something that was more use case driven or more slice driven or more business value driven. So it was really easy for us to conceptually go from lift and shift, this whole big thing and whole big value, to finding the thing that is highest amount of value in shortest amount of time. Right. And that probably talks about the I'm getting ahead, but that talks about the doing it by slice, looking at the highest amount of value in the shortest amount of time. Those two things are the business value.
Yeah, and going back to like a bit of modeling sort of approach to it as well is, if you're lucky to have a good logical data model within your organization, and some well-defined business domains for each of those a slice of that logical model that supports a particular business domain, you are then able to work out what is the critical stuff that needs to be migrated. Because I know I need these. I need entity 1, entity 2 plus entity 3 gives me the value I need. All right, so but then if I just add entity 4, that unlocks more value. So which order you do these things, it's a good old bus matrix approach. If you're like again, I can add a new fact now because I've already created all of these conformed dimensions already in the previous ones. It's very easy. So in that same way of looking for the migration, if you have if you go for a hybrid, a little bit of twist or a little bit of slicing as well as the big bang for the rest of it, if you're able to look to see what entities and model that as a separate side process as well as doing the lift and shift, you're going to get the quick win maybe, because the migration's never done until it's done. So, have you finished? No. Well, sorry, no success. But I have delivered you this new capability that unlocked this, that now the finance director is now able to close the books 2 weeks earlier than was before because he's got all the details he needs. Okay, well then you've got something to shout about, and it will drown out the noise if you're saying you're late on the migration. You're late on the migration. Yeah, I know, but I've done some value, so leave me alone. Buy me some time.
Yeah, and I look at again, I'm kind of speaking to the strategy and working with the business team, but I look for hard value, not necessarily soft, like I saved you time, but more like, hey, we brought these real dollars to the bottom line, right? As opposed to just, I saved you, 20% efficient. Well, is it good that Sonny's 20% more efficient? He's probably just, reading more emails, right? Or is it better that I brought X number of dollars to the bottom line, or we brought more dollars into the top line? Right. Those sorts of things. So I call those hard values and soft values, and hard values win every day and twice on Sundays.
Yeah, definitely. So I've power issues trying to find a cable.
I was afraid I ran you off. I thought it was like,
no, yeah,
you just left.
Run away, disappear. I'm not sure the background doesn't help. Yeah. So I need to sort that out at some point. So what we think? So, I suppose it's the fault. I've got the false promise of the modern data stack. So, and we've had that before. The false promise of the big data platform, and unfortunately, as the industry, we're only as good as our last recommendations or last thing that we put our name to. So, we have to. We don't want to get the situation where people are saying, "Oh, I need to go and migrate from a modern data stack to a brand new one." And I've seen it before. It's like migrating from Snowflake to Snowflake to Databricks, or Databricks to Snowflake, and they both can do the job. There should be no reason for you have to migrate from one to the other, unless it's just for technology's sake. Would be, and a lot of people, a lot of times, failed project is always blamed on technology. And we touched on it earlier. It's the most unlike. Well, it's more than likely going to be the people and processes that are actually the challenges.
Yeah, I think you're right, because if you were to say there is parity in those particular platforms and tools, then you have to look at the next thing, like processes and people, right?
Yeah.
And if there's parity in capabilities, then you begin to look at, like, what are all the things that one platform over another does that makes our lives more efficient or aligns with how we do business. And I think there is a right decision on your platforms, because if your business runs in a way that aligns closer to Snowflake or Databricks or whichever one, then you probably ought to be working on that platform. If your business doesn't align with the way they think about and work in that space, then maybe that's not the platform for you.
Yeah, exactly. So, and there's a question I'll get up to in a minute, Sonia. But I think the other one was, it's not doing anything at all can be sometimes as bad as doing something wrong, and missed opportunity. So, if your legacy data stack is not able to deliver the business requirements you've got at the moment, then you're losing out on potential to differentiate yourself from other businesses. You're looking out on the potential to sticking AI or capabilities on top of it, and you'll be disrupted and you'll be pushed out. So I think there's not scaremongering on that, but anyone out there that's on it, you need to migrate straight away and call us now. But no, companies need to look at, okay, it is working. Is it good enough? Is it future proof? The longer I leave it, how hard is it going to be to migrate at a later date? And am I just creating more of a problem for me at a later date, and I'll be pushed to only have the opportunity to lift and shift. I won't be able to do a slice of it because I've run out of time. So I think anyone out there that it's the writing's on the card, don't wait until it's too late and then think, oh, just to go and do a lift and shift now. You're gonna miss an opportunity.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think what I've seen in the marketplace, right, is that leaders are much more profitable with their data than laggards. And so there's a huge gap, and it is getting wider between the laggards and the leaders, right? And so it's something like Accenture has if I find it, I'll post it on this link, but Accenture has a document where they're talking about the gap between leaders and laggards and the amount of profitability. And it's something like 4 times more profitable, 10 times the speed to market. So if you think that just sitting back and I can wait and wait and wait and wait for the next thing, so I'll let this wave pass and I'll catch the next one, you're increasing the gap between you and the competition.
Yeah. And I think again, the problem is we've had the big data bubble. I will blame it. Well, it was one of the biggest over promises and under deliveries we've had in our industry, and the people that did skip that, well done. You probably saved yourself a lot of hurt. But that's probably not. That's not where we are at the moment. If you're on a modern data stack at the moment and you're using, a cloud one, it should be salvageable. You should be able to build on top of that and make it an AI stack or an AI enabled stack. So I'll probably come on to Sunil's question here, and I think I've understood it. So have a quick look. So I think migrating from data legacy to an AI system, it's easy to understand what legacy is. Yeah, we can understand that. MySQL Hadoop, but an AI ecosystem pipeline, what's it look like to you? So I'm not sure there isn't legacy enough. So let me, and I've been thinking a lot about this of, what's the next stage from a modern data stack, and I think I coined it the knowledge data stack. It's just for, because you've got to name something, and it also it's a good acronym, KDS, the kind data streets rather than the mean data streets. So a bit of fun with it, but so where I see the differences between a knowledge data stack, so an AI enabled data stack, and a modern data stack, is the ability to, unstructured data is one part of it. The modern data stack did deal with that, but I don't think we had all the right use cases to deal with that data, but we do now with AI. And so it's the ability to add the unstructured data with also the models, the associated large language models that are out in that ecosystem as well. So I think that's what takes a modern data stack to the next level, an AI data stack. You can run your models within it. You can run your models, your algorithms in it. You have your unstructured data alongside your structured data, and the other complication is you've got to have another level of security that we touched on earlier, which is going to deal with the complication of having models in there and unstructured data. So I think that's where I would say the differentiator is between what we would call a modern data stack in the past. Oh, and one more thing, you've got a lot less vendors now but the stack's doing it all. So you don't need to have 10 different vendors to have a modern data stack now.
Well, Chris, let me add on to that. One thing I think we're seeing an unlock with more of an AI stack is that the modern data stack promised a lot of self-service for business users, whether it's on their analytics or ease of use with their data. And I think AI is bringing that full self-service. It's accelerating that. It's really, that is now a promise that can be fulfilled. Yep. There's lots of vendors claiming they can do it. There's few that can, but I do think there's an unlock there that you'll be able to do that. And having that AI data stack really lets you unlock self-service for your business users.
I think, 100% right. And we all know the favorite vendor that you used to work for. We used to do a little work for them as well. ThoughtSpot. That did solve that self-service problem. You had to do some like pre-work for it, but it did enable it. And when I first saw it, I'm thinking that's what we need. But unfortunately, you still had to provide a lot of that semantic model, we call it, or the associated metadata to go and define it all. I think where we've got to now, what's AI has enabled is the ability for it to create that semantic layer, to be able to interpret questions in a way that you didn't need to have that built into a semantic layer, and also having the data modeled in a way that has additional metadata attributes, tags on it, that now a text to SQL or speech to SQL, if you know, can then go generate you the associated query you need and give you a report that shows the visualization of the report on top.
We can debate this too. I mean, it was probably 2 years ago we were talking about semantic layers and that sort of thing and how they were going to change everything. But I still see these platforms needing a semantic definition for you to actually have models that are workable. Yep. If you think you're going to throw data at your stack, your AI data stack, and not have a semantic model around that, you're asking for a world of hurt. So I would say semantic models of what those things really mean is as valuable as data models.
Right? Yeah. But 100%, and you know, I like making stuff up as well, or at least trying to give some new terms to things. So one did a post the other day. Shout out to Juan if he's listening anyway. A really good post breaking down semantic layer, what that is, knowledge graph, what that is, ontologies, what they are, and there was a whole debate of where one began, where the other one, when what one fell into another one. I'm thinking, right, what we're talking about context. We're talking about adding context to data. And I think I put in a comment about it's a context layer. That context layer has a number of components that provide the ability to give you said context. And because I'm sad and I like doing these things, we have an internal blueprint that we have for platforms. It's a functional view. And I actually so this is the first time I've aired this out, so you can shoot me down or add stuff to it. So these are the things I put, and this is another differentiator thing between a modern data stack and the AI data stack. So we're still on topic slightly. So a context layer, I think includes a semantic model. It includes a knowledge graph. It includes the ontology. It includes the business processes, and it includes data contracts that are needed. And there's probably some other inputs into it as well. The data catalog feeds into it with description, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But the thing that I put on there, you need something called context management. So now I've got all these different sources of context. I need to manage that context so it's in the right structure for the right use cases in the right format. And you know, if you're using a BI tool, you're going to have some sort of semantic layer that it's going via. You don't want to have to maintain that as well as maintain another semantic layer that's being used for your AI models or any other use case you've got to make. So, or having a knowledge graph that's being used for training your models or things like that. So it's working out. Okay, well, great. We need to provide all this context. What's the best way of managing this rich form of data? And the problem is we haven't even nailed data modeling yet. So now we're gonna nail the data modeling as well as the semantic model within it that's providing the context. So we do need some AI will help us on that, and I think I'm seeing it help us on that. And I think that's where that content management is going to need to be AI powered to keep it up to date and usable.
Yeah, and I think there's an orchestration that happens there, and it's almost by your interactions with, you know, your AI. If you're going to use LLMs or text to SQL or whatever else, the context you're talking about can be gigantic, and some of it not relevant, right? So you almost see this multi-pass of taking your question, understanding what are the context in your world, what's the semantics that need to be included and sent through, as opposed to the entire world, right? If this question has a finite context, then send just those things through so that you get a more concise answer, as opposed to I'm sending this gigantic context through, and you know that just broadens the chances of more hallucinations, more kind of these generic answers, I would say. But I just think context management and it is going to be down to the question that's answered and evaluating what needs to be in there.
Yeah, and I've used it. Context is king, and I think context is going to be that other differentiator. So we're talking about, you know, the leaders and laggers. The leaders are going to be able to make sure that not only have they migrated all their legacy platform, they've been able to deal with all the legacy context that you have everywhere as well, and being able to apply that apply that to their platform. So they got a good ability to be able to satisfy all their use cases from AI to BI to AI to BI.
It's interesting too, because when we went to the modern data stack and the cloud, we didn't think a lot about cost. We ran everything through. We thought we could do schemas on reads. We could do all of this in real time, and the cost went through the roof. Now you can send giant amounts of context through to these. You're going to pay for that, right? So if you, and you're going to pay for it in both dollars and time. So if you can figure out what's the right context for what I'm dealing with, I'll only send that through. You're going to reduce time, reduce consumption, reduce cost. And I think every AI data stack leader, implementer should be thinking about not just the business value I'm delivering, but am I doing this that is in a way that's going to scale for our business?
Yeah, and I think that's another good point as well, is that doing things properly. Well, I've talked about this when delivering new data marks and like that. Unless you've got a good ability to be able to manage change afterwards, you're going to get back to that situation of copy paste culture. Thinking, oh, it's too difficult to change that. I'm just going to go and repeat that. So and straight off that your first deployment, you should be able to, your ability to be able to do a deployment on top of your first deployment should be a day one capability. So hold on, I want to make an add change to it now. How do I do that? Oh, we haven't thought about that. Well, that's fundamental, and that should be a day one capability.
And I think that's why things like AI are going to help us go faster, especially in this data space. Maybe 30 to 50% faster on our existing platforms, on our existing models, and the way our existing data products. But for new things, for new products, I think you're going to see that 5-10x type of improvement. So think about that as how you use it in the value you're going to get out of it, 30 to 50% improvement versus 5x or 10x on new products.
Yeah, exactly. We touched on this before on the call, and I suppose a little bit of a shameless plug anyway as well. But Snowflake released their migration utilities.
Yeah,
they've been out a while. We've used them on a few projects up until now, and it's got better over time of what it can do. I think now with that and combining that with some AI and ML models on top of that as well is just turbocharging it, and that's what we've been doing recently. Also applying naming standards changes as well. So like, okay, well, now I've got this stuff, but I want to at least do something, at least apply the same naming standards, and then have a mapping of the table that can go through those things. We're doing some things like putting a view on top, so you can't actually anything coming in the legacy still comes in with the old names, but new stuff is named correctly to build on top of. So their automation is going to be king in doing these things, and metadata drives automation. So any associated metadata classification or profile, that term profiling again, of that data is going to allow any automation software that can do the migration for you or perform some of that lift and shift for you. Makes a big difference.
Yeah, let me just say on that one, when you think about tools like, what does Snowflake call it? They call it, what do they call it?
Snow Convert.
Snow Convert. Yeah, they call it Snow Convert. What they're really talking about is every one of these legacy platforms, not even legacy, modern platforms, they have their own way of doing things, right? And so those are vendor lock-in type of things. Like, hey, in Microsoft SQL Server, I can write CLR, stored procedures. Super bad idea, right? But I can do that. It's not anything I can do in any other platform. And so now they're able to convert those things. So I would be careful on all your lift and shifts. Like, oh yeah, we can just move all this over and we'll move over the stored procedures. And then you realize that like, oh, this is a Teradata specific set of functionality. And that platform doesn't do it. I got a bunch of work to do, or this is Microsoft specific. So just be aware that there's vendor lock-in or there's proprietary ways of doing things by system.
Yeah.
So that can definitely impact your vendor lock, your lift and shift.
Yeah, and I think that's where Snow Convert is quite good. It can actually identify areas or like your readiness of migration. Are using syntax that's not supported. I think Snowflake over the years have become, they create synonyms for nearly every single different variation, like concat for different, like the SQL Server version or the Oracle version. So whereas before you actually did have to go and change the code, now it goes, we support that. It's just a synonym to what it should be. having a look at establishing the effort, and then the migration impact, also the effort, migration effort, by doing some sort of validation to see how ready you are to migrate is a good exercise to do as well.
You know, I also wonder though, I mean, I think about this a good bit, is how much of this work do I, as a data leader and my team, want to take on?
Mm-hmm.
How much do I want to actually pay a professional to come in and do this, right? Because
what a really good question, and I could have primed that one, and I didn't anyway. I definitely agree with that. I think you need to use people that have done this before. I would say that, but go on. Sorry.
we would all love. Look, there's great things in each of these platforms. You know, I'm a Snowflake data superhero, so I'll say Snowflake. There's some really cool things in Snowflake I would love to get my hands on and do, and they might come up in a migration, but that can't be the reason for doing the work internally, right? It really does have to be around what's the best thing for the business, and we'll maintain it and we'll extend it and we'll do more work to it. But, you know, the idea of me saying, well, maybe I'm just not that, I don't have that much hubris anymore that just says, oh, I could do this myself, right? As opposed to, let's get someone who really knows how to do this. It costs some money, but in the long run, it probably saves us money.
Yeah, and and I suppose it's when you get the specialists in. We could all like paint our woodwork in our houses and that. And I've tried it. I've seen the outcome. And I've seen how long it's taking me to do it. But you get a professional in for something that they are, that they're this is their bread and butter. This is their bread and butter.
That is someone calling you. I think they want you to do a migration for them, Chris.
Yeah, I didn't tell you there was. Yeah, there's 5 migration requests since I've been learning. I just hung up on the phone. Let's make sure they call back as well. So get the professionals in with what I say, and your own staff. They're going to have better things to do, and more higher value things that they have the associated skill for that you can't bring someone external. So internal business knowledge is something you can't go and buy in externally, but you can go and buy in externally. Best practice, de-risk it. Have a agreed process. Is able to go and guarantee or stand in front of your C-suite and say, and what's good, give someone else the problem. Give someone else the issue if they don't finish on time. You may be the person that selected them. You still get told off for selecting the wrong vendor, or wrong partner. But use people that come in, they can accurately estimate this stuff, and they know they can deliver in a time that and within an estimated time that they'll stick to.
Well, I would, when you look at that, I would look at what vendors have done in the past. If your vendor comes in and says, we can lift and shift this for you, maybe that's not the best thing you want. Maybe that's not the one you want to go with. I think there's across, what did you call it? Lift and shift, and you have your lift and twist, or lift and shift and twist. Right? My first option is not a lift and shift, right?
No.
There would have to be a really specific hard business value that we could do, or some constraint that we had to alleviate, like you talked about, for me to do that. But then that is just a temporary solution until you move to the next thing.
Yeah, exactly. It's booking sticky back plastic, or a sticky tape on a problem. It's going to come unstuck at some stage. So we're nearly at the end, and I'm nearly at the end of my topics.
Worked out well.
Yeah, it did, didn't it? I'm just going to look and see. Yeah. Okay. We'll say how. Yeah. Okay. How? Yeah. I think we covered it. How AI accelerates the case for change. If you don't, if you're not in the race now or getting on the race now, then you're well. I'd be worried if you're gonna be in business in a certain amount of time, because all your competitors are doing this. So you've got to be in the game to win the game.
Yeah, I think you're right. And like I said earlier, there's a gap that is just getting wider and wider between the laggards and the leaders, right? And so, and you don't have to be bleeding edge. I mean, you don't have to be way out front. You can use commercial off-the-shelf products or services to help you get down that line. And it's not about just, well, we're using AI. I think that's important too, because it's the, am I building AI? Am I using it? Right. And so a lot of us just need to be users, right? We just need to be using it well, as opposed to trying to build that thing. Right.
Yeah. And another thought just popped into mind was the cost controls. You move to your AI platform. You need to make sure that, so cost controls, you thought your modern data stack bills were bad. So, GPUs aren't cheap. So,
yeah, I think about that a lot because, and I know we're getting up on time. I will just say, I think all of the AI data platform vendors can do a better job of showing us what cost will look like. And even how their products will work. Hey, we've put in, whatever sort of agentic AI into our platform or into our tool. How much is that going to cost me? I don't know. They don't know. What are the cost controls that you have on it? Like, hey, no question can cost more than X, or how much CPU how many cycles, how many iterations, how many turns can I go on this? How many tokens am I going to be limited on? There's lots of things. And I think with anything, you have to think about what are the guardrails. And those guardrails could be business guardrails, like a question, if it exceeds this, no. Right. Or whatever other physical guardrails there are out there. But I think companies and like us need to think hard about that and let our vendors know, like, hey, we need cost controls around these things.
Yeah, because I think everyone's got Gemini or a ChatGPT personal edition or whatever, and maybe you're paying £20 a month, $20 a month, $25 a month. Yeah, and you think, oh, it's cheap. They're all running at a loss. They must do, because I know how much I'm hitting at the moment. Okay, so then I'm getting all my £25 worth. Definitely a month. So yeah, and taking that and you're running all these things within your data platform. Yeah, it is. You get the benefits of now you're running it in your platform. Nothing's being trained on it. It's using all your own data. It's highly optimized for your own use cases, but it's going to cost you a lot more than your subscription to Gemini or ChatGPT or Copilot even. So, yes. Cool. Right. Well, no, we've got 2 minutes left, so we'll probably just call this a wrap. Thank you for everyone that listened. Sonny, thank you very much for your insightful insights into the data world. It's never a dull moment. I get told off for saying this, but normally we chat with over a few beers because I get told I always talk about it. But it's great having a the non-sober chats are also very interesting as well. But it's been good. It's been good having a good detailed thrashing around of what the migration world looks like. So for people that may want to catch up with you, may want to connect with you, how can they find you, and where will you be soon at some events?
Find me on LinkedIn. You will find me there. And if you're in Charlotte, we are doing user group next Wednesday. So data user group next Wednesday. Come to our, I think it's usergroups.snowflake.com/Charlotte, and you will find what we're doing there. I'm doing our take on the Snowflake Summit. We're going to talk about we're having Honeywell's going to talk about how they're using Snowflake. So some really interesting things there. I'm running that group with a couple of other peers as well. And then you'll always find me on LinkedIn and around and about.
Brilliant. Well, I'm sure I'll track you down soon, Sonny, and we'll chat again. But thanks again for your time. Thanks for your insight. And until next time.
All right. Great seeing you. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Tim.